Thanks for taking the time to listen to this review for our midterm exam. Remember, the test will be available for a 1 week period, but you need to take it within that period. It's available on Friday at noon to the following Friday at noon. And you can take it at any time that works for your schedule, but you must complete it by the deadline at noon simply because the answers go public and that would compromise the integrity of the test. So thanks for getting it done in that time frame. Here are the instructions for the quiz, and there are 2 parts to the test. First of all, it's strongly suggested that you use Chrome and do not use Safari when working with Canvas. It isn't as compatible, but Canvas and Chrome are. So make sure to use that as your browser so that you can see all of the imagery. You're going to identify the style of the image. So it's image identification. And you'll see one of the styles listed for our midterm, and that's what you want to click on and select. The other part are written questions that are multiple choice, and you just need to find the style characteristic that is false regarding each style. So let's get started. The style characteristics for the midterm are Victorian era arts and crafts, ukiyo-e, Art Nouveau, Vienna Secession, and then the influence of modern art chapter, which has Cubism, Futurism, Dada, Surrealism, and Expressionism. All the images I show you will be one of these styles. So having the style characteristics with you, you can make a screenshot of them or print them out, is absolutely essential to helping you do a good job on the test. The first style covered is the Victorian era, and geography can be a great clue when identifying style because it's graphic design after all, and there's type in it. So if it's written in English, it might be the Victorian era. We see chromolithography. They love that full range of color. Naturalistic renderings. They wanted that building and those portraits of the presidential candidates to look exactly like they do in real life. They use a full range of color and they try to make it look natural, real. Decorative type. Notice the type on the right for industrial exposition, or the Our Navy type. Kind of looks like it almost could go on the side of a circus wagon, doesn't it? It's very busy. It's decorative. They love lots of ornament and ephemera, which are those little art bits going all the way around those presidential candidates. So they would sit in their parlors, the Victorians, and scrapbook, and they might cut out Lady Liberty or that eagle and put it in their collection. So again, lots of ornament and ephemera are great clues for this style. Let's take a look at the type close up. Again, doesn't it look like a circus a bit to you? So it's very decorative. It's extremely busy. It's in English. The next style is arts and crafts. Comes from the same 2 countries. So it'll be in English if there's writing. It has stylized natural forms, leaves, flowers. So notice that stylization is different than naturalism. Those plants and leaves created by William Morris don't look like they would exactly as they would grow in a garden. Instead, he's abstracted them, he's stylized them. That makes it oh so different from Victorian. You won't mix it up at all. And we've got Horror Vacui. Look at the piece on the right, the book on the bottom. Notice that the entire space is filled with stuff. It's a total crowding of all these design elements in the field, characteristic of arts and crafts. And in that same piece, you also see medieval knights, even though this isn't the medieval time, it's a period after that. But they love looking back to the past, particularly medieval figures. So we'll see that lettering and we'll see images of people that look like knights or lords and ladies. And then there's a private press movement of books. So notice that it looks like an open book. That tells us we might be looking at arts and crafts. Many pieces that are arts and crafts are in black and white or maybe just one color. Unless it's a wallpaper, then it's going to be some of the images are in more range of color. But also that black and white quality could be a clue. The typography could look like a medieval initial cap or medieval lettering like Morse's Troy, or it could be very clean like Morse's golden font. We now move to ukiyo-e, which hails from Japan. The lettering, as you see in all three of these examples, is not left to right, it's vertical. And it's calligraphic looking. So that's a huge clue. We see floating objects in a floating world. The man in that image at the bottom looks like he's levitating. He doesn't have a drop shadow. That bridge that we see on the right, it's like a snapshot. There's this sense that we're frozen in time at the moment the rain hit. There's Japanese themes because a military governor, the shogun, sealed off all the borders of Japan to keep missionaries from evangelizing the people away from Buddhism. And so they had to look internally to their own culture for reference. And so we see geisha girls, we see kabuki theater, we see nature as a result of this isolationism. And woodcuts. The style that we see on the top, for example, is very clearly a woodcut. So those are all clues. If we look at the type, again, it may look calligraphic, it's vertical, it's a huge clue for us. Art Nouveau is our next style. It comes from France, so if it's in French, ooh la la, you've got the right answer. You're going to be with Art Nouveau. But it also might be in German, Jugendstil, and the United States. So it's a very popular style. Here we see examples where it's clearly written in French, so we would know what we're looking at. We see stylized natural forms again, but this time it's flowers and birds. And if it's a bird, it's most often a peacock. They loved peacocks. You've got whiplash curve, bimorphic curvilinear lines. Even the type can be sort of curvilinear and bimorphic. And then notice on the right, we see very exotic females. They are removed from contemporary time and place, like Muka's woman. And that sort of idealization of that exotic female is a very strong characteristic of Art Nouveau. Notice the type is also very curvilinear, as we see here on the metro in Paris. And this typography is a good example of the kinds of fonts we see in Art Nouveau. The Vienna Secession hails from Scotland and Austria. So it might be in English, or it might say something like secession steel, and it would tell us what we're looking at. They love elongated figures like the ones on the left and type. And they love these very tall, thin compositions and that hand-drawn, incredibly stylized type. Sometimes it looks like psychedelic type from psychedelic posters. There's also a tendency for it to look a bit like a stained glass window, those sort of flat planes of color. So take a look at that. Here's a close-up of the typography. Again, hand done and stylized to go with the rest of the image. Now we move to the final chapter, the influence of modern art. Cubism comes from France. There might be writing sometimes on a Cubist painting. And we see a monochromatic palette. Look on the left. It's very muted, right? It's a lot of grays and browns, kind of a somber, muted palette. That's typical in analytical cubism. We have a faceting of surfaces. Think of a diamond, the way a diamond is cut into different facets. So cubism looks like that. And it's because of simultaneity. The subject, for example, these women in the piece, the models that Picasso painted are standing still, but Picasso is moving all around them, to the left, to the right, above, below, and he's incorporating all those different viewpoints into one, which makes it look faceted like that. And that's simultaneity. And we have geometric shapes as well. Again, if there's typography, it kind of looks like this. It kind of looks like it's collaged in a little bit. It's painted. We move to Futurism, which hails from Italy. So if there is typography that's in Italian, like in the piece on the top, I see the word esplosione. So that is clearly Italian, and it's a clue. But it also might be onomatopoeia, a use of words whose sounds suggest a sense or emotion. The type is so free. It looks like a monkey dropped it off a 10-story building, right? It's all over the place. In the piece on top, we see a woman reading a letter from her lover at the front of war, and above her, all these bombs are going off, and we see these sort of sound effects made with the type. And that's very typical of futurist poetry. So we have simultaneity in graphic works. Letters suggest sounds from different sources heard at once. In figurative works, the viewer remains stationary, so the artist is stationary, and the subject is moving all around them and is represented in multiple positions. Futurism graphic works have geometric patterns. Onomatopoeia again. They love sounds. Look at the robot is making this sound. Ooh, see that? And it is a robot. We can see it's an automaton. They love industry. Look at those industrial bolts on that wonderful bound book. And they love factories. They love like motorcycles, fast cars, machines, speed, technology, all of that. They love the futurists. When we look at type, it looks like this. Again, very free typography. Now, Dada comes from Switzerland and Germany. Now, Switzerland is a country where they speak French, they speak German, they speak Italian and English. And of course, we have German in Germany, and it could be a clue if there's typography in a piece like the one on the left is in French. But it's clearly not Art Nouveau, right? Very typical to see this kind of clip art in a Dada piece. Notice the type isn't free like it was in Futurism. It's got more order to it, doesn't it? But it could be nonsense because they love absurdity, humor, and social criticism. They collage, photomontage images of photos together to make a new piece. Or they could use ready-made materials. My husband likes to make sculptures out of different found objects. So he actually likes making robots. And this is exactly what a ready-made is. Now, a ready-made here, this example is Marcel Duchamp. We're looking actually at a man's urinal, but he calls it the fountain. Or he might put a flat iron together with tacks and glue. Those are ready-mades. Take a look at Dada type. Again, it feels more ordered than what we saw with Futurism, doesn't it? But it's got like these little clip art pieces. All of those are clues along with language. It's not in Italian here, neither one of these two pieces. So those are helpful clues. All right, and Surrealism, which comes from Spain. Does it look like a dream or a nightmare you might have had last night, like that bird putting that dagger through that poor woman's foot? Okay, so that's very typical of the style. We see a lot of personal symbolism, like in the work of Miro, which I'll show you a slide of, and illogical juxtapositions of elements, like we see in René Magritte's piece on the left. The familiar is put in an unfamiliar setting, and they're put together, so it's strange. It's like a dream. Now, there isn't type, but Miro, as I mentioned earlier, does this sort of graphic language. Do you see that? That's all about personal symbolism. And it's the closest thing to type you'll find in a piece, and that could be a clue. Expressionism, the last style, comes from Germany. And you might see typography in a piece like the one on top, which would tell you what you're looking at. We've got bold contour drawing and woodcuts in Die Bruch. There are two types of expressionism, Die Bruch and Der Blaue Reiter. And in Die Bruch, it looks like a woodcut. We see a deep sense of social crisis. We feel a lot of empathy for the suffering of that woman and all of those children and the old people that are pictured there. So in the Der Blaue Reiter, it looks like an abstract painting, like the work of Kandinsky or maybe Klee. We've got thick paint, exaggerated, distorted color drawing and proportions. If we look at typography, the one on the left is clearly woodcut type cut out. And on the right, we see the language of, the German language, which could be a clue as well. It's very expressionistic. It's all about expressing human emotions. So those are the styles that will be covered on your exam.